Tycoon abandoned his wife and children, condemning them to poverty inside. Silence ruled, the kind of silence that screamed of absence, the absence of love, the absence of warmth, the absence of everything that once made this house a home. Kong Min-jae stood before a wide glass window, a crystal glass of aged whiskey in his hand, untouched. His tailored suit hugged his frame perfectly, the gold of his cufflinks catching the last rays of sunlight. To the outside world, he was a symbol of success, the brilliant tycoon who had built an empire from dust. But here, in the cold space of his pristine home, he was a man slowly slipping into a hollow life. Behind him, quiet footsteps echoed on the marble floor. Hygiene, his wife, appeared from the hallway. Her eyes searched his face, her fingers nervously twisting the hem of her soft cotton blouse. She wore no designer clothes, no makeup, no perfume. Only sincerity, only love. The same love that had once convinced Min-jae to marry a girl far below his status. "Min-jae, dinner is ready," she said gently, trying to sound cheerful. He didn't turn around. "I already ate." Her heart sank, but she smiled anyway. "I made your favorite, braised short ribs, the way your mother used to." "I said I already ate." "Hygiene," he interrupted, cold and clipped. Still, he didn't face her. She swallowed hard. The soft lighting made the unshed tears in her eyes glimmer. She nodded, retreating slightly, the air too heavy to breathe. Silence again, until he finally spoke. "Why do you still try?" he asked. His tone wasn't cruel, just exhausted. "This isn't working. You know that, right?" Her chest tightened. She took a step closer. "I know we've been distant lately," she said, her voice trembling but steady. "But that doesn't mean we can't find our way back. You've been under a lot of stress. Maybe we need time. Together." He turned then, slowly, his eyes meeting hers. But there was no love there, only resentment. "This isn't about stress," he said. "It's about incompatibility. I've changed." "Hygiene, you haven't." She flinched. "What do you mean?" "I mean, look at you. Look at me. Do we even belong in the same world anymore?" Those words, so casually spoken, struck like a blade. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. He placed the glass down on the table with care. "I've built a life most people can only dream of. But I come home, and it feels like I'm stepping backward, into the past." Her eyes filled with tears. "So that's what I am to you? A reminder of your past?" "I didn't say that," he muttered, turning his face away. "But you meant it." Her voice cracked. "We built this life together, Min-jae. Do you remember that tiny one-bedroom apartment in Mapo? When you stayed up every night studying investment strategies while I worked double shifts to pay rent? You promised me we'd reach the top. Together." "I did reach the top," he snapped. "You chose to stay where you were." His words burned. But what hurt more was how easily he said them. "I chose to raise our children," she said softly. "To build a home, while you built your empire." He rubbed his temples. "I don't want to argue." She stared at him, truly seeing him. The tailored suit, the designer watch, the hollow eyes. And in that moment, she understood. He was no longer the man she married. "Is there someone else?" she asked, barely a whisper. He hesitated. The pause was enough. She closed her eyes. "I see," she said, her voice flat now, a wall of pain rising behind it. There was a long silence between them. Then she whispered, "You've already left me. Your body is here, but your heart, it's gone." "I never asked you to wait," he said, almost defensively. "No, but I did," she replied, holding back sobs. "I waited through the late nights, through the silence, through the loneliness. I waited because I believed in us, because I loved you." Min-jae's jaw clenched. He looked away again. Down the hallway, the sound of small laughter echoed. Their children, Ji-woo and So-yeon, playing with paper dolls and toy trains. Hygiene's eyes filled with new tears. "What about them? Will you leave them too?" He didn't answer. The light outside was fading fast, the sky now a cold shade of blue. The warmth was gone. "You've changed," she whispered. But I haven't. I'm still the woman who cheered when you signed your first contract, who sat by your hospital bed after your ulcer burst, who kissed your forehead before every pitch meeting. She placed her hand gently on his arm. But I won't beg, Min-jae. If you're going to throw us away, at least have the courage to admit it. He turned to her slowly. His face was unreadable. I want a divorce. The words fell like thunder. Her breath hitched. The tears finally broke free, sliding silently down her cheeks. But she stood tall. After a moment, she nodded. Then let me be the first to say goodbye. She turned and walked away, not with weakness, but with grace. Every step away from him was a step back to herself. Back to the woman who loved, who gave everything, and who would now have to fight to survive. Min-jae stood alone, the shadows creeping up the walls of the penthouse. He had everything: power, wealth, reputation. But in that moment, he had never felt more empty. Outside, the wind had picked up. The streetlights buzzed to life as night consumed the city. She pulled her coat tighter around her shoulders and looked down at her phone. No messages, no missed calls, just a blank screen reflecting her new reality. She turned to see if he'd come after her, even for a second. He didn't. From the back seat of the taxi waiting at the curb, Ji-woo and So-yeon peeked through the windows. Their sleepy eyes turned to confusion when they saw their mother coming down alone. Ji-woo, just 10 years old, frowned. "Where's Appa?" he asked as she climbed in. Hygiene didn't answer right away. She shut the door, gently pulled them into her arms, and gave the driver a shaky address. A rundown motel on the east side. "We're going somewhere special, okay?" she said with a voice that trembled under the weight of the lie. So-yeon nodded without question, resting her head on her mother's chest. Ji-woo, however, kept watching her face. "Did Appa tell you to leave?" The question pierced deeper than she was ready for. "No, sweetheart," she whispered. "Sometimes people just stop knowing how to love right. Then we should teach him," he said, voice small and serious. Her heart shattered again. The motel room smelled of mildew and cigarettes, the wallpaper peeling at the corners. There was one bed, one flickering lamp, but Hygiene knelt on the floor and unfolded the children's clothes, humming a lullaby as if they were in the comfort of their old home. When they were asleep, curled up like kittens beside her, she allowed herself to cry silently, her body shaking with the weight of everything she hadn't said. Meanwhile, back in the penthouse, the lights were still on. Min-jae sat alone in the vast living room, the silence ringing louder than before. He poured another drink but didn't taste it. The hum of the refrigerator, the faint ticking of the antique clock, they all seemed to accuse him. Something in his chest itched uncomfortably. Was it regret? No, he told himself. Just discomfort. Guilt was a weakness. He had done what needed to be done. His phone vibrated. A message from Sua. "Finally, I was starting to think you'd never do it. I'll be over tomorrow. Let's celebrate." He stared at the text. Her words didn't feel like celebration. They felt like chains. But he responded anyway. "Okay, see you." And yet, when he looked at the empty hallway where his children used to run barefoot, laughing, a part of him hesitated. But it was too late now. He had made his choice. Hadn't he? The next morning, Hygiene awoke with a stiff back and a tired soul. She quietly slipped out of the bed, careful not to wake the kids, and stepped into the bathroom. Staring at her reflection in the cracked mirror, she barely recognized the woman looking back at her. Hair undone, eyes swollen, a storm of sorrow behind them. She whispered to herself, "You have to be strong now, for them." But where would she go? Her parents were dead. Her friends had drifted away after the move into wealth. She had no job, no money, just 2 children and the promise she made to protect them. She spent that day walking through the city, hand in hand with her kids, looking for any opportunity. She knocked on restaurant doors, bakeries, laundromats. "I can clean. I can serve. I'll do anything," she told one owner. They looked at her clothes, designer but wrinkled, and raised eyebrows. Most turned her away. One even laughed. "A woman like you? What do you know about real work? She kept smiling, bowing politely, moving on. By sunset, her feet were blistered, but she found a small diner that agreed to let her wash dishes for the night shift. Paid almost nothing, but it was something. Back in the penthouse, Sua arrived wearing a tight black dress and red lipstick. She walked in like she owned the place, dropped her designer handbag on the table, and kissed Min-jae on the cheek. "You look tired," she said, pouring herself wine. "Second thoughts." He said nothing, just sat down, watching her swirl the wine. Her smile too rehearsed, her touch too practiced. She didn't ask about his kids, didn't mention hygiene. She talked about brands, social events, new investors. He nodded through it all, but every word reminded him of what he'd just thrown away. That night, he lay in bed beside Sua, awake, eyes fixed on the ceiling, and for the first time in years, he dreamed of the past. He saw hygiene, not the one from yesterday, but the one from their early days. Laughing as she pulled him under an umbrella during a monsoon, rain pouring around them, her hair stuck to her cheeks. He remembered her singing to Ji-woo when he had a fever, her voice soft and off-key but full of love. He remembered the time she made rice balls shaped like hearts because he was too nervous before a presentation. His throat tightened. What had he done? But morning came, and he wore his suit again, tied his tie, and buried the memory deep. Meanwhile, Hygiene scrubbed greasy pans in the back of the diner, sweat dripping from her forehead, her hands raw, but she smiled when she returned to the motel room that night, carrying 2 small cartons of warm soup. "Guess what?" she whispered, waking Ji-woo and So-yeon with a kiss. "Your mommy got a job." So-yeon clapped sleepily. Ji-woo just hugged her waist silently. They ate together, sitting on the floor, laughing through spoonfuls of broth like it was a feast. Min-jae sat at a gala that same night, surrounded by applause and champagne. Reporters asked about his next big investment. Cameras flashed. Sua clung to his arm, and yet his eyes wandered to the empty space beside him, to the absence of the only people who had ever truly loved him. The lights were bright, but he had never felt darker inside. It was the question she kept asking in her mind. How long can I keep this up? Beside her, Ji-woo stirred. "Iyama," he whispered groggily. "Do I have to go to school today?" She looked down at him and ran her fingers through his tangled hair. "Not today. We're still settling in. Remember?" He nodded but didn't smile. There was something in his eyes she hadn't seen before. Tiredness, a heaviness. They spent that day hunting for a cheaper place to stay. The motel was draining what little money she had managed to save from pawning her jewelry. Every door she knocked on seemed to close before she could explain their situation. Single mother, no job security, 2 children. By evening, she returned to the diner, forcing a smile as she tied her apron. "Can you take extra hours?" Her manager, Mr. Beck, asked without looking at her. "Yes, anything. You'll be on your feet longer. No breaks." "I understand." She worked until the sky turned black, then blacker. When she returned to the motel, she found Ji-woo sitting up, eyes wide open. "You're still awake?" she asked softly. He hesitated. "I had a nightmare." She sat beside him immediately. "What was it about?" He looked away. "That Appa forgot our names." Her breath caught in her throat. She pulled him into her arms. "He didn't forget, baby," she whispered. He's confused. He doesn't know what matters yet." "Do you still love him?" he asked suddenly, voice muffled against her shirt. She didn't answer right away. Her arms tightened around him. "I loved him very much," she said carefully. "But sometimes, when people love something too much, they forget how to protect it." Ji-woo didn't respond. He just sat there, quietly holding on. On the other side of the city, the penthouse was filled with music and artificial laughter. Sua threw her head back dramatically as she sipped her wine. "Can you believe she left so easily?" she said, her voice playful. "I thought she'd cry or fight or something." Min-jae looked at her from across the table. The clink of her rings against the glass felt sharp in his ears. "She didn't leave," he said quietly. "I forced her to." Sua raised an eyebrow, leaning in. Same thing, darling. Honestly, she was dragging you down. He said nothing, his eyes drifting to the untouched steak on his plate. Now, Sua continued, her tone sweetening, there's something we should talk about. What? I want to move in. Min-jae blinked. What? You heard me. This whole secret girlfriend thing is getting old. I want my place here, my name on the title, my picture in your wallet. He stared at her, stunned by the speed, the bluntness. You said we would take things slowly, he muttered. That was before you got rid of her. Now there's nothing in the way, unless you're having second thoughts. She stared at him, her smile sharp like a blade. Her challenge hung in the air. He reached for his glass. His hand trembled slightly. Of course not, he lied. Back in the motel, Hygiene folded uniforms with care, mending Jiwoo's shirt where it had ripped. So-yeon watched her from the bed. Ama, are we poor now? The little girl asked suddenly. The needle paused in Hygiene's hand. No, she said. We're not poor. We're just between blessings. So-yeon tilted her head. What does that mean? It means things are hard right now, but they won't be forever, because we have each other. And love. So-yeon smiled, but her eyes glistened. I miss Appa. I know, baby, she whispered. I know. She tucked the children in and stepped outside into the freezing air, her breath coming in clouds. She looked up at the sky as if it might hold answers. Where do I go from here? She didn't know, but she knew she couldn't go back. The next morning, she dressed the children in their school uniforms, worn but clean, and walked them to a nearby public school. The building was older, paint peeling from the walls. Jiwoo held her hand tightly as they approached. Will they laugh at us? He asked. Why would they laugh? Because we don't have nice things anymore. She knelt in front of him, cupping his face. Let them laugh. You walk tall anyway. You are not what you wear. You are what you carry inside. His eyes filled with tears, but he nodded. Later that week, after another brutal shift, Hygiene returned to the motel to find Jiwoo waiting with his fists clenched. What happened? She asked. They called me trash, he muttered. Some older kids. They said my father abandoned us because we weren't good enough. She rushed to him, pulling him into her arms. You are not trash, she said, voice shaking. You are kind and smart and brave, and your father, he lost his way. That doesn't mean you're less. I wanted to punch them, he admitted, trembling. But you didn't? No. Then you're stronger than they are. She held him tightly, fighting back tears. The world was cruel, but she would teach her children how to stand against it. And while she patched their hearts together with love and words, Min-jae stood at a business conference, giving a speech to roaring applause. He smiled, waved, shook hands. But beneath the polished exterior, his chest felt tight. He pulled out his phone during a break and stared at a photo. One he had forgotten was still in the gallery. Hygiene and the children, taken 2 years ago during a picnic. She was laughing. Jiwoo had ketchup on his cheek. So-yeon was wearing fairy wings. His thumb hovered over the delete button. He didn't press it. Instead, he turned off the phone and walked out to the balcony. The city below sparkled like gold, but it had never felt so far from home. And deep inside, a question began to form, one he couldn't yet answer. At the diner, Hygiene wiped down the same tables over and over. Her hands were cracked from the hot water and detergent, her back aching from hours spent standing without rest. Still, she smiled at every customer. She bowed deeply to every rude remark, every impatient gesture. Dignity was a luxury she could no longer afford, not when her children needed to eat. Each night, she returned to the motel with leftover scraps tucked in paper napkins. She'd pretend they were treats. Look, she would say with false cheer. The chef made us something special again. Jiwoo always nodded quietly, breaking his share in two to give more to his sister. So-yeon would clap and say it was delicious, even if it was cold and greasy. They all played along, like they were in a storybook, not barely surviving. But one night, When Hygiene came back late, far later than usual, Jiwoo didn't ask her where she'd been. He just sat by the window, arms crossed, looking out into the dark. She placed a plastic bag with warm bread on the table. I stopped by the bakery down the street. They were throwing these out. No answer. She crouched beside him. Did something happen? His voice was low. Why doesn't Appa call us? Her heart skipped. He just needs time, she said softly. Time for what? To forget us? Jiwoo's eyes welled up, but he didn't blink. I waited, every day. I waited for his car to stop in front of the motel. I waited for a message, a call, anything. She reached out, but he pulled away. I see how tired you are. I hear you crying at night when you think we're asleep. Why does he get to live in that big house, with new clothes and warm food, while we hide in a room that smells like mold? Jiwoo, I hate him, he said through clenched teeth. No, she shook her head. Don't carry hate in your heart, my love. It will poison everything good inside you. Then what should I carry? He shouted. Hunger? Shame? Lies? So-yeon stirred in the bed, whimpering. Hygiene put a finger to her lips. Please, she whispered. Let's not wake her. But Jiwoo had already turned away. That night, she sat alone on the floor beside the window, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. Somewhere out there, Min-jae was living untouched by all this pain. And the thought no longer made her cry. It made her cold. A week later, Mr. Beck at the diner pulled her aside at the end of a shift. I'm letting you go, he said bluntly, not meeting her eyes. She froze. I don't understand. I've been on time. I've done every shift. You've done fine, he interrupted. But my cousin just moved back into town. I'm giving him your spot. Her mouth opened, closed. But I have children. You think you're the only one? He snapped. She bowed, deep and low. Please, I'll work weekends, nights. I'll do dishes only. It's done, he said, turning his back. Outside, it had started to rain. She stood under the awning, soaked, clutching her bag of tips. Barely enough to last 2 days. She didn't know where to go. Her knees buckled slightly under her. And then a voice. Ma'am. She looked up. An older woman in a modest coat stood near her. She looked kind. Tired, but kind. I saw you working here these past weeks, the woman said gently. I run a small laundry shop 2 blocks down. I've been needing help. It doesn't pay much, but it's steady. And you can bring your kids after school if you need. For a moment, Hygiene couldn't speak. Her throat was too tight. Then she bowed, tears mixing with the rain. Thank you, she whispered. That night, she sat with her children in the motel, drying their socks on the heater, telling stories. Real ones this time. About her childhood, about growing up in the countryside, about dreaming of opening her own cafe one day. You still can, Jiwoo said. She laughed softly. Maybe someday. No, he said, staring at her with certainty far too old for his age. You will. You're the bravest person I know. She reached for him, pulled him close. For the first time in days, the warmth didn't feel like something she had to fake. Back in the penthouse, Min-jae stared at a spreadsheet on his laptop. But the numbers didn't make sense anymore. They were profit margins, returns, growth charts, everything he had once lived for. But now they felt hollow. Sua walked in, scrolling through her phone. They're offering me a brand deal, she said. Skincare. 5 million won for a single post. Should I take it? He didn't answer. She stopped, staring at him. You've been somewhere else lately. He rubbed his forehead. Just tired. You're always tired. She crossed her arms. Is it her? He looked up sharply. Is it Hygiene? His silence was answer enough. Sua's expression turned ice cold. She was weak, she said. She clung to you like a shadow. You're better off. She held me together when I was nothing, he said, voice low. She gave me a family, and you gave her the world. No, he stood slowly. I gave her a cage. Sua scoffed. Are you seriously regretting this? After everything we've built? What have we built? He asked, suddenly furious. Money, appearances, empty rooms, and fake smiles. She stared at him in disbelief. "You're insane." But he was already walking away. He entered his office and shut the door. He sat at his desk, stared at a photo frame buried under papers. The old photo, the picnic, Jiwoo's messy grin, So-yeon in butterfly wings, Hae-jin holding a sandwich, laughing like the world had no walls. He picked up the frame, held it in both hands, and for the first time he whispered her name, "Hae-jin," and stayed curled into fists beneath his chin. So-yeon shivered once, then pressed herself tighter to her mother's side. Hae-jin stayed awake, afraid that if she slept, the cold would win. She watched the frost form little veins along the glass. The night was dark, but not quiet. Sirens passed now and then. Someone yelled in the hallway. Doors slammed. Somewhere above them, a child coughed until it sounded like choking. She stared at the ceiling, lips pressed together, her mind chasing thoughts she tried to suppress. She'd taken the laundry job. Paid little, but it paid on time. The owner, Mrs. Choi, was kind, though strict. She allowed the kids to sit in the back room after school, but only if they stayed quiet. So-yeon colored quietly on scraps of cardboard, drawing smiling suns and crooked hearts. Jiwoo didn't color. He sat with his back against the wall, textbooks open, eyes scanning, devouring. One evening, as Hae-jin folded a pile of freshly pressed shirts, she glanced over to see him still hunched, reading the same page. "Sweetheart," she said gently, "you need to rest your eyes. I have to finish this," he muttered. "You've been on that chapter for an hour." "I'm not reading it," he admitted and held up a pen. The page was filled with numbers and scribbles. "I'm rewriting it. From memory. It's how I study now." She blinked. "From memory?" He nodded. She crossed the room and sat beside him. "That's impressive. I want to get into the Science Academy," he said. "The one across town. They have scholarships." Her heart clenched. "That's a tough school." "I know. There's entrance exams, and uniforms, and bus fare." "I'll find a way," he said quickly. "I will." She reached over, gently brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "You shouldn't have to worry about these things," she whispered. "I do," he replied, "because Appa doesn't." The words didn't have anger in them this time, just fact, cold, settled truth. Later that night, she lay awake again, her mind looping over the same thought. How do I build a future when the present is crumbling? By morning, she had her answer. She took the children to school early. Then she walked across the city to a market square she hadn't been to in years. It had been their first date, hers and Min-jae's. He had brought her here to eat street food, pretending he wasn't ashamed of their simplicity. She stopped in front of an old cart selling handmade rice cakes. The smell was the same. The vendor, much older now, recognized her. "Miss Lee," he said, squinting. She bowed deeply. "Ajushi, I didn't think you'd still be here." "Ah, you were always kind," he chuckled. "And patient. You waited an hour while your boyfriend tried to haggle with me." She smiled faintly. "I need a favor," she said, voice trembling. "I need to know where I can rent a pushcart. I want to sell something. Anything." He looked at her. Really looked, then nodded slowly. "Come back tonight. I'll show you." That evening, she walked home with a contract tucked in her coat and a key to a cart she could use after the vendor closed. It was scratched and squeaky, but it had wheels and hope. That night, she brought it to the motel and showed the children. "What is it?" So-yeon asked. "A future," Hae-jin replied softly. "A moving one." She began making kimchi pancakes and sweet rice balls late into the night, testing flavors, perfecting recipes from memory, her mother's, her grandmother's. She burned the first few. The smell filled the motel hallway, and a woman knocked to complain. Hae-jin apologized with a bow and offered her a fresh pancake. The woman accepted, then asked for 2 more. The next morning, she set up the cart near a subway exit. People passed quickly, most ignoring her. Some glanced, then looked away. She stood straighter, forced a warm smile, called out, Hot rice balls, kimchi pancakes, homemade. First nothing. Then one man stopped, bought a pancake, walked away, then another. A child pulled on her mother's coat and begged for one. The mother gave in. By midday, she had sold almost everything. That evening, as she counted her small pile of coins, she felt something she hadn't in weeks. Pride. She rushed to pick up Jiwoo and Soyun from the laundry shop, their school bags slung over their backs. "We made enough for dinner," she said, beaming. Jiwoo raised an eyebrow. "Real dinner. Real. Hot. Fresh." They ate together in a corner of the motel room, sharing stories and jokes. Soyun showed her a drawing she made of a tiny cart with sparkles above it. "It's you," she said, "selling magic food." Later, when the children slept, Hygiene sat beside the window again. The wind still howled. The walls were still cracked, but her heart was steady. On the other side of the city, Min-jae poured himself another drink. His eyes were bloodshot. Suah had gone out for the evening, leaving perfume and silence behind her. The apartment was pristine, immaculate, empty. He scrolled through his phone. He had no messages, no missed calls, no sound, except for the ice melting in his glass. Then he opened social media. Someone had posted a blurry photo, a food cart in a subway exit. A woman standing behind it, hair tied back, smile wide. He squinted. It was her, Hygiene, selling food, laughing with strangers. He stared at the image, unable to look away. She was still standing. Even now, even after everything, she had found a way. And for the first time since she walked out that door, something in him cracked. Not guilt, not yet, but a slow, creeping sense of loss. One he couldn't name. Her jacket was damp. Her socks too. But she didn't flinch. Not when it was her third day straight in the same spot. Not when her hands were blistered, and especially not when her children depended on every coin she earned. A woman with a baby strapped to her back stopped and ordered a rice ball. "You made this yourself?" she asked. Hygiene nodded, managing a small smile. "Yes, my mother's recipe." The woman took a bite, her eyes widening. "This is real food, not the stuff they sell in convenience stores. I'll take 5 more." Moments like that kept her going. She had sold out before noon the day before. But today, the rain kept most people underground or locked behind their umbrellas. By 3 in the afternoon, her fingers had started to go numb. Still, she stood there. She didn't notice the figure across the street. The man in the dark coat, standing under an umbrella that didn't seem to protect him from the rain at all. He stood motionless, eyes fixed on her, on her cart, on the way she handed a napkin to a child, knelt to tie his shoelace when he dropped it, on the way she brushed her damp hair back and smiled at the old man who shuffled by and dropped a coin without buying anything. Min-jae had been standing there for 15 minutes. He didn't know why he had come. He'd seen the photo online, tracked the subway exit, told himself it was curiosity. But as he watched her, really watched her, he felt a pressure in his chest that he couldn't shake. The Hygiene he remembered had been softer, quieter, gentle. But the woman before him now stood like a mountain in a storm, weathered, unmoving. He saw her cough quietly into her sleeve, then straighten again before anyone could notice. He saw the ache in her shoulders when she reached for the tongs. He saw everything he had ignored for years, and yet, she still smiled. He crossed the street slowly, unsure what he was going to say. He stepped beneath the tarp, water dripping from the edges like tears. She didn't notice him at first. "Hello, welcome," she said automatically, still focused on the griddle. "We have hot kimchi pancakes today." Then she turned and saw him. The smile dropped. For a moment, neither of them moved. Rain dripped from his umbrella. Steam hissed from the grill. She swallowed, her lips pressed into a thin line. "What do you want?" she asked. Her voice wasn't angry. It wasn't kind either. It was tired. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. She turned back to the grill, flipping a pancake with more force than necessary. "If you're here to feel better about yourself, you can walk away now. I don't owe you that." I didn't come for that, he said, voice quiet. I didn't know I was coming until I was already here. She let out a soft laugh, not amused. Bitter. You always had a talent for not knowing things until it was too late. He stepped closer, cautiously. I saw a photo online. I thought, maybe... She cut him off. You thought what? That I'd be broken? Crawling in the dirt? Begging for scraps? That would make things easier for you, wouldn't it? No, he said quickly. I didn't expect this. This? She turned to him, eyes flashing. Me surviving? Rain drummed harder against the tarp. She wiped her hands on a towel, breathing deeply, trying to calm the tremor in her voice. You left me with nothing, she said. No home, no support, not even a goodbye for your children. His shoulders tensed. I was wrong. Wrong? She whispered. You were a coward, Minjae. You chose luxury over love. You threw us away. I thought you'd be better off without me, he said, the words tumbling out. She stared at him like he had just confessed to murder. You thought abandoning your family would help them? I thought I couldn't be what you needed. You were right, she said coldly. You couldn't. Silence stretched. Then, faintly, he whispered, I'm sorry. She looked at him for a long moment. Her face didn't soften. Do you think that word fixes anything? No, he said, but I needed to say it. Not for me, she replied. For you. A child tugged on her sleeve then, pointing at the cart. She turned away from Minjae without another word and served the boy with practiced grace. He stood there for a moment longer, his presence ignored, and then he stepped back into the rain. As he walked away, soaked to the bone, he realized something strange. The pain he felt wasn't from her rejection. It was from knowing she didn't need him anymore. Not to survive, not to smile, not even to stay angry. He had become irrelevant. Meanwhile, Hygiene packed up the cart that night with stiff fingers, every joint aching. She didn't cry, she didn't shake, but as she walked the cart slowly down the dark street toward the motel, she whispered one thing under her breath. I will never let them suffer again. The morning came gray and brittle. A thin layer of frost coated the sidewalk, glistening like crushed glass beneath the first pale sunlight. Hygiene moved stiffly, her joints sore from the cold, the weight of the cart heavier than usual as she wheeled it toward the subway entrance. Her gloves were worn, the fingertips thinning, but she gripped the handles with determination. A single gust of wind nearly blew her scarf from her neck. She tightened it, lips pressed together. Behind her, tiny footsteps hurried to keep up. Iama, So-Yun called, breathless. Wait, my shoe is loose. Hygiene stopped at once. She knelt, readying the laces of the girl's sneakers. The soles were nearly coming apart. There, she said, kissing her daughter's forehead. Ready for school? So-Yun nodded, clutching her notebook like a treasure. Can I draw something for your cart again today? Yes, Hygiene said, smiling softly. People liked your drawings yesterday. One woman said they made her feel less lonely. Ji-woo stood a few steps away, already dressed and ready, watching silently. His backpack hung heavy on his small shoulders. He didn't complain. He never did anymore. The three walked in silence, the city coming alive around them. Buses groaned to life, men in suits rushed past without glancing down, and the scent of old coffee lingered at the corners of alleyways. Outside the school gates, Hygiene crouched once more, fixing So-Yun's scarf and smoothing Ji-woo's collar. You both know where to wait for me after class? She asked. Ji-woo nodded. At the laundry shop. We'll help Mrs. Choi if she lets us. Good. Study hard. And remember, she paused, touching their chests gently. You're strong. You're kind. You're enough. So-Yun hugged her tightly. Ji-woo offered a small smile, forced but real. As they disappeared through the gates, Hygiene stood in the chill, eyes lingering long after the bell rang. By mid-morning, her cart was steaming once again. The scent of sweet red bean buns and sizzling kimchi filled the air. The usual foot traffic moved past her, but more people were beginning to recognize her now. Ajumma, a young man called. You still got those crispy rice balls? Fresh out of the pan, she smiled. Your daughter draws the little signs, right? They're cute. She does, she said proudly, handing him a small paper-wrapped bundle. The rhythm was beginning to form. People came and went. Money passed between hands. A few kind words exchanged. It was honest work. Humble, but it kept her going. Until she heard a familiar voice. Excuse me. She turned quickly. Not Minjae. Someone else. Someone she hadn't seen in years. Her brother. She froze. Her grip tightened around the spatula. Junho? She whispered. He looked older, worn. His hair had grayed at the temples. He wore a simple coat and held a paper bag in one hand. I heard you were here, he said quietly. Someone showed me a picture on social media. I thought you were in Busan, she murmured, her eyes narrowing with a mix of disbelief and caution. I came back a month ago. He stepped closer, eyes searching her face. Hygiene. I didn't know. I didn't know how bad things got. She didn't speak. He looked at the cart, at her cracked gloves, at the food she was serving. You should have called me, he said softly. You should have told me he left you. Her jaw clenched. I didn't want pity. It's not pity. His voice cracked. It's family. For a moment, she wanted to cry. Not out of pain, but from how much she had missed that word. Family. I have nothing to offer anymore, she whispered. He looked at her, eyes filled with quiet pain. You gave me a home when I had nowhere to go, remember? When I lost everything, you opened your door. You fed me, no judgment, just love. She shook her head, blinking fast. That was a long time ago. I never forgot it, he said. And now it's my turn. She looked down at the food, the smoke rising into her face, stinging her eyes. Her hands trembled. I'm not a burden, she said. I'm making it work. I know you are. That's why I'm proud of you. She looked up, surprised. Junho smiled. I mean it. You're still standing. And these kids of yours? You raised them alone. Don't ever think you're small. Her lips trembled. She tried to speak, but nothing came out. He reached into his coat and handed her a small envelope. What's this? Just a little help to fix the heater, buy the kids better shoes, maybe rest for one day. She hesitated. Please, he said, his voice barely audible. Let me do this for you. Finally, she nodded. She took the envelope with shaking hands. He smiled and stepped back. I'll be around, he said. This time, I won't disappear. As he walked away, her knees nearly gave out. She gripped the cart to stay upright, her breath catching in her throat. She didn't expect kindness anymore, not even from blood. And yet, there it was. That night, she returned to the motel and turned on the small heater after replacing the cord with the money her brother had given her. The room filled slowly with warmth, and So-Yun sighed in her sleep, curling into the blanket more deeply. Ji-woo stayed awake. He sat up and looked at his mother, who was sewing his torn sleeve. Iyama? Yes. Do you think we'll ever have a house again? She paused, then looked at him. I don't know, she said honestly. But I do know one thing. What? That no matter where we live, I will never let you go hungry again. He stared at her, lips trembling. Even if it means I work every hour of every day, even if my hands bleed, I will never let this world take from you again. He leaned forward and hugged her tight, burying his face in her shoulder. And for the first time in months, she allowed herself to cry where her son could see her. But they were not tears of weakness. They were the tears of a mother who had made a silent vow. This life would not break her. The meeting had been going for 30 minutes, but he hadn't spoken once. Sua, seated beside him, crossed her legs slowly and leaned in close enough to whisper, You look like you haven't slept. He didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on a spreadsheet projected onto the screen. A red line dipped steeply near the end of the chart. Projected revenue loss. Several board members were arguing now. Words like instability, poor market timing, and overinvestment floated in the air. But Min-jae didn't move, not even when one of the senior investors cleared his throat loudly. "President Kong," the man said, tapping the table. "With all due respect, this expansion into the international market was your call, and now the numbers are bleeding." Still silence. Sua's eyes narrowed slightly. She turned toward him and whispered again, "Min-jae, say something. You're making them nervous." He finally looked up. "I'm not here to make anyone comfortable." One of the junior partners, barely 30, tried to regain control of the tone. "We're not doubting your leadership, sir, but the Tokyo branch isn't performing as projected. And the scandal with the contractor, that wasn't my oversight." Min-jae cut in, voice sharp now. "That was procurement, and I'll handle it." The words had weight, but they didn't land with confidence. His voice lacked the fire he once carried effortlessly. It trembled just enough for those in the room to sense the shift. He used to command. Now he reacted. When the meeting finally ended, the room emptied quickly. Only Sua stayed behind. She stood, picking up her clutch. "This isn't like you." Min-jae remained seated. "Things are complicated." She rolled her eyes. "You're distracted. Ever since you went to see her." He glanced at her, startled. "Yes, I know," she added coldly. "Don't look so surprised. You left your umbrella on the floor when you came back that night. You reeked of street food and guilt." He looked away. "You think I don't know when you're slipping?" she said, voice rising. This version of you? It's pathetic. You used to make decisions without blinking. Now you act like a man who's lost his crown." He didn't respond. "I made you shine, Min-jae," she said, stepping closer. "Not her. Not your little ghost of a family. Me. And if you throw this away, if you throw me away, you'll fall faster than you climbed." He finally stood, taller than her, but somehow smaller in presence. "I already fell," he said quietly. "I just didn't feel it until now." She stared at him, stunned into silence for once. He walked past her without another word, the door clicking shut behind him. Later that evening, back at his penthouse, he poured himself a drink and sat in the dark. The city lights outside flickered like memories. He stared down at the glass in his hand and thought about Jiwoo. How old was he now? 11? 12? He had missed his birthdays. All of them. His children existed now only in memories and vague images. Jiwoo holding on to Hyejine's hand, So-yeon with ribbons in her hair. They lived their lives without him, and the world had not collapsed. No, he had collapsed. Quietly, privately, while pretending to be the king of something that no longer mattered. His phone buzzed. A text. From his assistant. "Chairman Jang is requesting an emergency meeting tomorrow. Talks of withdrawing funding." He sighed and leaned his head back, staring at the ceiling. Everything he had built was crumbling, and for the first time he didn't feel panic. He felt release. Across the city, Hyejin was locking up her cart for the night. She had moved to a new spot near a high school where foot traffic was stronger. The cart was doing better. Some days she even sold out before lunch. But her body paid the price. Her fingers were swollen, her back constantly sore. At night, she rubbed her knees and whispered prayers through the pain. As she wheeled the cart down the alley toward the motel, she heard footsteps behind her. Fast, light. "Iyama!" Jiwoo's voice called out. She turned just as he came running up, breathless and smiling. "I've been waiting for you," he said. "I finished all my homework. And Mrs. Choi let me help fold laundry today." She smiled and brushed sweat from his forehead. "You're growing into a fine young man." He grinned. "Guess what?" "What?" "I got top marks in science again. The teacher said I should apply for the academy." She paused, her smile faltering. "The one across town?" He nodded eagerly. "They have scholarships, full ones. But I need 2 recommendation letters and to take the entrance exam." Her heart tightened. "Jiwoo, the exam fee." "I know," he said quickly. "I already found out. It's 40,000 won. I was going to ask Uncle Junho, but I wanted to talk to you first." She bit the inside of her cheek. 40,000. Not impossible, but it would mean cutting meals, skipping a day of supplies, risking everything. Still, she looked at his eyes, so full of fire, of hope, of belief. She nodded. "We'll find a way." His smile lit up the alley. That night, as she watched him sleep, clutching a worn textbook to his chest, she whispered, "You are the reason I breathe." In another corner of the city, Minjae stared at his reflection in the bathroom mirror. His tie was loosened, his eyes bloodshot. He reached out and touched the glass, as if trying to reach through to something beyond it. But all he saw was a man who used to be something, and the echo of a life he once could have had. He whispered her name into the silence, not to call her back. It was Jiwoo who noticed first. His legs were stretching past the edge of the bed. His shoulders had started to square out. His voice had begun to carry something heavier, deeper, a quiet weight he never spoke of. One night, after the lights had gone out and So-yeon was already asleep, he lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Hyejin was sitting at the small table, quietly sewing a torn hem on her coat. "Yama," he said, voice low, "can I ask you something?" She looked up at once. "Of course. If Appa ever comes back, would you take him in again?" Her fingers froze around the needle. The thread trembled. She swallowed hard. "Why are you asking me that?" He hesitated. "Because I saw him." Her heart stopped. "When?" she whispered. "2 days ago, at the back of the crowd near your cart." He didn't say anything, just watched, and then walked away. She stared at him, her pulse in her ears. "You're sure it was him?" Jiwoo nodded. "He looks older, sadder, but it was him." She slowly set the coat down, folding it in her lap. "Did he see you?" "I don't think so," he said, "but I didn't try to hide." Silence fell between them, and then quietly he added, "I didn't feel anything." She turned to look at him fully. "Not anger, not sadness," he said. "Just nothing." A beat passed, then another. She reached out and gently took his hand. "You don't have to feel anything," she said. "Not for someone who walked away." He looked down at their hands. "Do you hate him?" "No," she said, "because if I hated him, he'd still have power over me. I don't want to carry that." He looked at her, studying her face, searching for signs of bitterness. But there was only weariness and strength. "I think So-yeon still misses him," he whispered. "She's too young to understand why he left," Hyejin said softly. "And that's the cruelest part. She remembers his arms, not his absence." They were quiet again. Then he asked the question he'd buried for years. "Did he leave because of me?" Her breath hitched. She stood, crossed the room, and knelt in front of him. "No," she said, her voice trembling. "No, Jiwoo. He left because of him. Because he was weak. Because he didn't know how to choose the right thing when it got hard." Her eyes filled, but she blinked the tears away. "You were never the reason. You were the only reason I survived." His lip quivered, just for a second, before he nodded. That night, he cried quietly into his pillow, facing the wall, and Hyejin sat beside him until his breathing slowed. At school, Jiwoo began to withdraw. He no longer raised his hand in class. He stopped eating during lunch. His teacher called Hyejin one afternoon, concern thick in her voice. "He's brilliant, but he's starting to shut down." She left work early and waited outside the school gates. When Jiwoo saw her, he looked surprised and then ashamed. They walked in silence. "I'm sorry," he muttered. "For what?" "For being like this. For making you worry. For needing so much." She stopped walking. "Look at me," she said. He did. "You are not a burden. You're a boy growing up too fast. You carry more than you should. And I'm proud of you for still standing." Tears welled in his eyes, but he blinked them away. "Just don't give up on yourself," she said. "You're allowed to feel tired, but don't let it make you small." He nodded slowly. She held his hand the rest of the way home. Later that evening, Jiwoo sat on the floor of the motel room with So-yeon, helping her draw. She was scribbling a house with smoke curling out of the chimney. "Is that our motel?" he asked. "No," she said. "It's the house we're going to live in someday." He looked at her, eyes full of something he couldn't name. "It has a garden," she added, "and a puppy, and a room just for you." He smiled faintly. "What color is the roof?" "Blue," she said proudly. "Because blue means safe." Hygiene stood at the stove warming soup. Her hands paused, listening to the softness in their voices. She didn't turn around, but she closed her eyes and allowed herself, just for a second, to believe in the blue roof too. The next morning, Jiwoo left early for school, but instead of walking straight there, he went the other way. He stood outside a building for several minutes before walking in. It was a cramped office in a dusty building with a faded sign, Gangnam Science Academy Admissions. A middle-aged woman sat behind a desk, looking up over her glasses. "I'm here to apply," Jiwoo said, "for the scholarship. I have my transcripts and my essay." She reached for the documents. "Your name?" "Jiwoo Kong." Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "Kong?" "Yes." She looked through the papers, then nodded slowly. "We've heard of you. Your teacher sent a recommendation last week." He blinked. "She did. She believes in you." He swallowed. "You'll need to take the test next month. It's not easy." "I'll be ready." She studied his face. "You're young, but you speak like someone who's already lived too much." He didn't reply. When he left the office, he exhaled deeply and looked up at the sky. The clouds were heavy. Mrs. Lim, the elderly woman who owned the building, stood behind the counter, counting change. "You're early," she said without looking up. "I didn't want to be late," Hygiene replied, voice quiet, but steady. Mrs. Lim finally raised her eyes and gave a nod. "You're still sure about this?" "Yes. It's a big risk. I've taken bigger ones," Hygiene said with a faint smile. "This one feels different." Mrs. Lim slid a thin envelope across the counter. 1-year lease. Rent is reduced for the first 3 months. After that, it's full price. You pay, you stay. You miss one, you're out. "I understand. Don't think I'm doing this because I'm kind," the older woman added. "I'm doing it because I believe in stubborn people. And you're the most stubborn I've seen." Hygiene took the pen, her hands trembling just slightly, and signed her name. She didn't cry, but when she stepped outside into the drizzle, lease in hand, she tilted her face to the sky and whispered, "We're almost there." The next few weeks passed in a blur of work, repairs, and long nights. The space was dusty and forgotten, walls stained, windows fogged with years of neglect. But she scrubbed and painted, often with Jiwoo and Soyeon beside her, music humming quietly from a second-hand radio. One afternoon, Jiwoo stood in the doorway, hands on his hips. "What are you going to call it?" She looked up from the counter she was sanding. "The cafe." "Yeah. I don't know yet." He smiled. "What about home?" She paused, looking at him. "It doesn't look like one yet," she said. "Not yet," he agreed. "But it will." Soyeon added, "Can I draw the menu signs?" "You'll be in charge of them," Hygiene replied, ruffling her daughter's hair. At night, when she lay in the motel bed with aching muscles and blistered fingers, she closed her eyes and imagined the scent of fresh bread, the laughter of customers, the warmth of full cups and quiet conversations. She imagined a world she built with her hands, not her tears. One day, Mrs. Lim brought her a gift, a small espresso machine with a broken button. "It leaks," she warned, "but it works." Hygiene bowed deeply. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," the woman muttered. "Fix it first." Jiwoo spent hours tinkering with it, taking it apart and putting it back together, his hands covered in grease. When it finally steamed without leaking, he grinned like he'd conquered the world. They tested it together, sipping burnt coffee and laughing until they coughed. A few days later, on a rare sunny afternoon, Hygiene stood outside the cafe with a paintbrush in hand, writing the name above the door. "Dulce Hanek," it read. "Sweet home." Customers trickled in slowly at first. Construction workers, a tired nurse, students from the high school nearby. She served them pastries baked at dawn, coffee poured with care, and warmth that had nothing to do with the thermostat. Word spread, quietly, steadily. One morning, as she arranged the display of rice cakes in the front window, a man in a dark coat entered. He was thin, nervous. His hands shook slightly. "Table for one?" she asked, already reaching for a menu. He nodded. She led him to a corner table, poured him a glass of water, and waited. He didn't order for several minutes, just sat there, staring at the wood grain on the table. Then, finally, he said, "You don't remember me, do you?" She tilted her head. "I used to walk by your cart every morning. You gave me a pancake once. Said I looked like I hadn't eaten in days." Recognition bloomed slowly. "I do remember. You didn't charge me. I don't charge people who are starving." He reached into his coat, pulled out a crisp envelope. "I started working again. I owe you." She took the envelope, unsure. "You don't have to." "No," he said, firmer now. "You helped me. That matters." She watched him go, heart full and quiet. That night, Jiwoo waited until So-yeon had fallen asleep, then sat beside Hyejin as she balanced her ledger. "You did it," he whispered. "Not yet. You did. You turned a street cart into this." She set the pencil down. "I just wanted to give you and your sister something better." He hesitated. "Do you ever think about going back to school? Studying again?" She smiled faintly. "Sometimes." "You should," he said. "You're smart. You deserve more than survival." She reached out and took his hand. "So do you. That's why I'm here. So you can aim higher than I ever could." He didn't say anything more, but she saw the glint in his eyes, the quiet fire, the hunger not for food, but for a future. A few days later, she found a note in her apron pocket. It was written in Jiwoo's handwriting. "I want to make you proud. I already am." She folded it gently and tucked it into her wallet. Meanwhile, far across the city, Min-jae sat in another boardroom, listening as men picked apart the remains of his company's failed merger. His name, once spoken with respect, now floated in whispers and thinly veiled disdain. His phone buzzed. He didn't answer. He looked out the window instead. The sky was changing again, and for the first time, he felt like he was no longer watching from above. The doorbell chimed. Jiwoo stepped in, his uniform slightly wrinkled, his backpack slung across one shoulder. There was something different in his eyes. Alert, nervous, hiding something. "You're early," Hyejin said with a smile. "Everything okay?" He nodded quickly, but didn't meet her gaze. "Yeah, just needed to talk." She came around the counter, wiping her hands on a towel. "Of course. What's going on?" So-yeon looked up from her drawing. "Did you get in trouble again?" "I don't get in trouble," Jiwoo mumbled. Hyejin raised an eyebrow. "Not again." He offered a crooked grin, but it vanished just as fast. They sat down at the farthest table, where no customers were near. "I met someone," he said finally, his voice low. Hyejin's heart tightened. "A girl?" "No, a man." He looked up. "Appa." The room went still. So-yeon looked up from her coloring. "Appa." Hyejin's lips parted slightly, the blood draining from her face. "What do you mean, you met him?" "I didn't plan it," Jiwoo said quickly. "I was coming back from the study center." He was standing across the street, outside, just staring at the cafe. She didn't move. Her hands trembled slightly, gripping the edge of the table. "He saw me. I saw him. I started to walk past, but then..." His voice cracked. "He said my name." She covered her mouth with her hand, eyes closing briefly. "I didn't want to talk to him," he said, "but something in me just froze." "What did he say?" she asked softly. "That he was sorry, that he had no right to ask anything, that he just wanted to see me." So-yeon slid off her chair, walking over slowly. "What did he look like?" Jiwoo hesitated, tired, like he hadn't slept in weeks. "He looked older." Hyejin placed her hand over his. "And what did you say?" "I asked him why he left us." The silence thickened. "And he said, He thought we'd be better off, Jiwoo continued. That he was a coward. That he thought money would protect him from regret. But it didn't. Tears rose in Hyejine's eyes, unbidden. I didn't forgive him, Jiwoo added. But I didn't hate him either. I wanted to. I thought I would. But standing there, he looked so small. Soyeon's voice was barely a whisper. Did he ask about me? Jiwoo turned toward her. Yes, he asked if you were healthy, if you still like to draw. She blinked. What did you say? That you're better than he ever deserved. She smiled softly, then walked back to her drawing, quiet. Hyejin stood slowly, as if the air had thickened. I should have known he'd come back, she murmured. Men like him always return when everything else collapses. Jiwoo looked up at her. He said he lost the company, that Sua left, that he has nothing. She laughed under her breath, bitter and dry. Of course, the world only matters to him when it turns its back. He stood too, looking her in the eyes. I didn't invite him in. I didn't ask him to explain. But I think he's not going to disappear this time. Her voice dropped. That's what I'm afraid of. That night, when the cafe closed and the lights dimmed, Hyejin stood by the window long after the children were asleep. She watched the street in silence. And then she saw him. Min-jae stood under the lamppost across the street, coat too thin for the breeze, hair falling into his eyes. He didn't approach, just stood there, as though watching from a distance was all he believed he was allowed. She didn't move, didn't open the door, but she didn't look away either. He stood there until the wind picked up, and then he turned, disappearing into the shadowed alley. She closed her eyes, her hands clenched at her sides, because she knew. She hesitated before answering. Hello? A man's voice crackled on the line, urgent. Is this Ms. Lee Hyejin? Yes. Who's calling? This is Detective Nam from Gangnam Police Department. I need to ask you a few questions about Kang Min-jae. Her blood ran cold. She stepped out of the cafe, hand pressed to her ear, heart pounding. What happened? There's been a financial investigation into one of his companies. He was named as a primary witness, but we can't locate him. We were told you might have contact. I haven't, she said quickly. Not in years. He left. Are you sure? A few days ago, he withdrew a large amount of cash from an ATM near your cafe. There's surveillance footage of him watching your storefront. She closed her eyes. He's not part of our lives anymore. The officer paused. If he reaches out again, please call us. She ended the call with shaking fingers. Inside the cafe, Soyeon was teaching one of the elderly customers how to fold napkins into flowers. Jiwoo was bent over a stack of textbooks, brow furrowed in deep concentration. Everything looked peaceful, and yet, something was unraveling again. That night, Jiwoo found her staring at her phone long after closing. You're still thinking about him. She didn't deny it. I don't know what he wants, she said. But if the police are involved, it's not something small. He looked scared, Yama, when I saw him, like a man on the edge. She nodded slowly. He is on the edge, and I'm afraid he's going to drag us back with him. 3 days passed in uneasy silence, until the moment she feared finally came. It was late past closing. Rain tapped softly against the windows. Jiwoo and Soyeon were already asleep in the back room. The last light over the counter buzzed faintly. A knock at the glass. Hyejin froze. She turned slowly, heart thudding in her chest. He was there. Min-jae, soaked to the bone, his hair plastered to his forehead, a bruised cut above his eyebrow. His coat was torn, one of the sleeves ripped at the seam. He looked nothing like the man she had once loved, or even the man she had once hated. He looked hollow. She didn't move to open the door. He raised his hand, fingers trembling slightly. His lips formed her name through the glass. She stood still, spine straight. Finally, she walked to the door, unlatched it, and opened it just wide enough for her voice. What do you want? His voice was raspy. Please, let me talk. She shook her head. I told you before, we're not a part of your life anymore. I don't have a life anymore, he said. Not one that makes sense. That's not my responsibility. I know. He swayed slightly, rain still dripping from his clothes. I lost everything, he whispered. The company, the house, Sua. She ran when things got hard. But you stayed when I had nothing. And I threw you away. She tightened her grip on the door. Don't come here looking for forgiveness. I'm not, he said. I came to tell you that I'm being investigated. I might go to prison. She didn't flinch. Then face it, like a man. I needed to see you, he continued, voice breaking. I needed to see our children. Just once. They're not yours anymore, she said, calm but fierce. You lost the right to call them that the day you shut the door behind us. I didn't know what I was doing. Yes, you did, she snapped. You knew, and you did it anyway. His chest rose and fell, desperate. I'm sick. Hygiene, he whispered. I've been coughing blood. I haven't eaten properly in days. I don't know where to go. For a moment, something flickered behind her eyes. A shadow of the woman she used to be. The one who would have offered him a blanket, a meal, even a second chance. But that woman had been broken and rebuilt, and she no longer lived for the comfort of those who hurt her. I'll give you one thing, she said finally, her voice cold. An address to a shelter. They'll give you food. A bed. He looked at her like a drowning man offered a life raft. She handed him a slip of paper, then stepped back. This door stays closed, she said. Don't knock again. He took the paper with shaking hands, nodded once, and turned into the rain. She locked the door behind him, and though her hands trembled, her heart did not. He waited until So-Yun went into the back to draw before approaching her at the counter. He came back again, didn't he? He asked. She didn't look up. How did you know? Because you haven't smiled since. She set the cloth down and met his eyes. Yes, he came back. Said he's being investigated. Said he's sick. Jiwoo said nothing for a long moment. Then, do you believe him? I don't know, she admitted. But it doesn't matter. I gave him a number to a shelter. That's all. His face was unreadable. You're scared, he said. She exhaled. Not for me. For you. For your sister. He doesn't get to walk in here and tear everything down again. He nodded once, then went back to his seat without a word. But something had shifted. That evening, while Hygiene was closing up, her phone rang. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. A cold, sharp female voice spoke. Ms. Lee Hygiene? Yes. This is Attorney Choi from Seoul Business Law Group. I represent Sua-Young. Hygiene froze. We'd like to discuss a matter concerning your recent public interaction with Mr. Kang Min-jae. What? Ms. Young is pursuing a defamation case regarding statements made that could affect her business image and personal reputation. I haven't said anything about her, Hygiene replied, voice rising. I haven't spoken her name publicly in years. There are reports circulating online. Rumors tied to your cafe's recent popularity. Social media users referencing your story. If it's proven that you encouraged or failed to stop those narratives, you could be considered liable. This is ridiculous. I'm calling as a courtesy before formal documents are issued. Our client expects silence going forward. Any mention of Ms. Young or her connection to your past will result in legal action. The line went dead. Hygiene stood motionless in the darkening cafe, her breath caught in her throat. The door creaked open behind her. Jiwoo had heard everything. He stepped inside slowly. Why is she coming after you now? He asked. Hygiene rubbed her temples. Because she's afraid. If people know the truth about what she and your father did, she loses what little reputation she has left. Jiwoo's eyes burned. Let her lose it. It's not that simple. It should be. She turned to him, her voice low. I fought too hard to keep this cafe safe, to give you and So-Yun something steady. I can't let them drag us into court and bury us in debt just because their empire is crumbling. He didn't answer. He just clenched his fists. The next morning, news broke. Not through Hygiene. Not through any official channel, but through a video, a short clip filmed anonymously. Grainy footage of Min Jae sitting on a park bench, gaunt and pale, speaking softly to someone off camera. He talked about losing his fortune, about choosing greed over family, about Sua manipulating everything, how she forged documents, blackmailed investors, and left him to take the fall. "I betrayed the only people who ever truly loved me," he said in the clip, "and now I'm paying for it. But she's still pretending to be clean." The video went viral. Within hours, comments flooded social media. "This is the CEO who left his wife for that influencer, right? She's the one who opened that cafe with her kids. I heard she started with a food cart. Why isn't Sua being investigated too?" Hygiene watched in stunned silence as her phone buzzed nonstop. Customers whispered at the counter. Journalists sent requests for interviews. Old friends who had disappeared during her darkest days suddenly resurfaced, praising her strength. Ji-woo sat beside her, scrolling through the reactions. "You didn't say anything," he said. "He did it himself." She nodded slowly. Maybe for once, he told the truth, but her voice carried no triumph, only exhaustion. That night, the cafe door opened again. The bell barely made a sound, and standing there, soaking wet, as if the rain had become his second skin, was Min Jae. He didn't speak. He just stood there, eyes sunken, hands empty, shirt clinging to his frame. She stared at him. "You said you wouldn't come back." "I know," he whispered, "but I had to tell you. I made it right. I told them everything. About her. About what I did." She didn't blink. "And what do you want now? Gratitude?" "No," he said. "I don't want anything. I just wanted you to know that I'm not running anymore." She looked at him for a long time. Then finally she stepped forward. "You're too late," she said, her voice quiet but unwavering. "We already stopped needing you." He nodded once, slowly, but something wasn't right. A flicker, then a spark. Then, in seconds, flames curled beneath the door of the back storage room, where cleaning supplies were kept. A chemical reaction, accelerant, intentional. By the time the smoke reached the front of the cafe, it had already begun to devour everything Hygiene had built. She was asleep when the call came. The ringtone was loud in the silence of the motel room. Hygiene jolted upright, her heart pounding. Ji-woo stirred on the floor mat beside her, rubbing his eyes. She answered on the third ring. "Hello, Ms. Lee. Hygiene? This is Officer Kim. There's been a fire." Her chest clenched. "Where?" "Your cafe. Emergency services are on site now. No injuries reported, but the damage is significant." "No," she whispered. "No, that can't be." She was already out of bed, throwing on clothes, shaking Ji-woo gently. "Wake up. Get dressed. The cafe." He didn't ask. He didn't need to. They arrived 20 minutes later. The street was bathed in red and blue flashes. Smoke billowed from the building, now charred and broken. A gaping wound where the cafe windows used to be. Firefighters moved like shadows, their voices muffled by the chaos. Hygiene stood at the edge of the police tape, frozen, her hands trembling. Gone. The sign was gone. The door melted. The warmth, the light, the stories, all turned to ash in the space of a single night. Ji-woo stood beside her, silent, his face pale. A firefighter approached, removing his helmet. "Are you the owner?" She nodded. "We think it was deliberate," he said. "We found traces of accelerant near the back room." Her breath caught. "Who would do this?" she whispered. He looked at her gently. "Do you have enemies, ma'am?" Ji-woo's eyes widened. "Sua." The thought hit like ice. She had warned them. Legal threats. Silence demanded. And now this? Hygiene's knees buckled slightly, but she didn't fall. Ji-woo reached for her hand, holding it tightly. "I worked for all of it," she murmured. "Every chair, every mug, every tile. With these hands." "I know," he said. "We know." So-yeon arrived shortly after, still in pajamas, wrapped in Junho's coat. She saw the smoke, the blackened sign, and immediately began to cry. "My drawings," she said. "My menus. They're all gone." Hygiene crouched and pulled her close. "No," she whispered. "They're in here." She pressed a hand to her daughter's heart. "They're not gone. They're just waiting to be drawn again." Behind her, Junho spoke to the fire chief, his face set in anger. "They'll investigate," he said when he returned. "If this was arson, they'll find out. And if it was her, I don't want revenge." Hygiene cut in, standing. "I want to rebuild." Junho looked at her in disbelief. "You just lost everything." "No," she said. "I almost lost everything once before. When he left. When I had nothing. But I still had my children. And I still do." She looked at the smoldering wreckage. "I'll start again." "Where?" Jiwoo asked, his voice raw. "Anywhere," she answered. "Even if I have to sell from the sidewalk again. I'll do it." That morning, when the sun rose behind the ruined cafe, painting the smoke in gold and pink, she stood with her children and watched it without looking away. She had cried all her tears years ago. This time she chose fire. Not the one that burned her cafe. The one that lived in her now. The curtains remained shut, the faint smell of smoke still clinging to the clothes they had worn the night before. Hygiene sat at the edge of the bed, her shoulders hunched, hands motionless in her lap. A single photograph, one of the cafe's soft opening, framed and slightly singed, sat beside her. She had salvaged it from the ashes that morning, glass cracked but the image untouched. Jiwoo sat across from her, his knees pulled to his chest. Soyeon was sleeping in Junho's room for the night, too shaken by the fire to be in the same space where the walls still remembered. Jiwoo had been quiet for hours, until now. "I should have done something." Her head lifted slowly. "What do you mean?" "I saw the comments online, after the video of Appa. I saw people blaming her. Sua. They were tagging her, posting about her fake image. And I just let it happen." "You didn't light the fire, Jiwoo," she said gently. "No, but maybe someone else did because of what they read. Maybe they thought they were helping us." She crossed the room and knelt beside him. "This world burns easily," she said. "But don't think for a second that your silence or your truth caused this. If someone lit that fire, it was because they chose to destroy, not because you chose to survive." His eyes shimmered. "I wanted them to know who she really was." "I know, and they do now. But at what cost, Iyama?" His voice cracked. "You worked so hard, for everything, and she took it. Again. I can build again. I'm tired of watching you rebuild." That made her chest tighten. He lowered his head. "Every time we get close to peace, someone tears it away. I want to be strong, but I'm so angry." She touched his cheek softly. "Then be angry, but don't let it harden you." He looked at her, eyes brimming. "I don't know how to carry this anymore." "You don't have to carry it alone," she said. "You never did." He leaned into her arms, burying his face in her shoulder. For a long moment they stayed that way, breathing, breaking, rebuilding in the silence between sobs. Later, when the room had quieted and Jiwoo was finally asleep, Hygiene stepped outside. The hallway was empty. The city beyond the windows glowed dimly. She needed air. She walked to the sidewalk, standing beneath the flickering streetlight, arms crossed against the early spring chill. And then a voice came from behind. "I heard about the fire." She didn't turn. She didn't need to. Min-jae stepped beside her slowly, keeping distance. "I saw it on the news," he continued. "I thought." "Don't," she said sharply. "Not tonight." "I didn't come to ask for anything," he said. "I came to tell you the truth." She turned then, slowly, her eyes like steel. "Now you want to tell the truth?" "I should have told it a long time ago," he said. "But I was ashamed, and I thought if I disappeared, I could bury the damage." She didn't blink. "You can't bury what's still burning." He nodded slowly. "I know Sua did this," he said, "or paid someone to. She's trying to silence you because she knows what I said in that video is only part of it. She's desperate. And dangerous. She destroyed the last thing I had. Hygiene whispered. No, he said quietly. She tried. But it's not gone. Not really. Her voice turned sharp. What do you know about what I've lost? He looked at her. Eyes red, face thin, body smaller than it used to be. Not from lack of height, but from the erosion of everything pride once fed. I know you'll rise again, he said, because you always do, and I also know I don't deserve to watch you do it. She didn't answer. He stepped closer, his voice breaking. I ruined our family. I abandoned our children. I chose wealth over love, and when I realized what I lost, it was too late. But you made a life out of nothing. You raised warriors. You became something I can't even look in the eye without shame. Her silence pierced deeper than words. He reached into his coat and pulled out an envelope. It's not much, he said, but I sold what little I had left. I want you to have it, for the cafe, or for whatever comes next. She stared at the envelope. I don't want your guilt money, she said coldly. I know, he replied, but it's not guilt. It's an apology that can finally mean something. She hesitated. Then, with slow hands, she took it. Not as acceptance, not as forgiveness, but as proof that even fallen men sometimes try to leave one final, honest thing behind. He stepped back. I won't come again, he said. Not unless you ask me to. She looked away. He walked off into the night, and she stood beneath the broken streetlight, holding the weight of his past in her hands. Not for him. Hygiene stared at it in silence every night after So-Yun fell asleep. After Ji-woo turned off the lights and laid his head against the pillow, pretending not to worry. It wasn't just paper. It was the weight of a history she had spent years trying to bury. On the third morning, she opened it. There wasn't just money inside. There was a short, handwritten letter, simple, folded twice. I built empires and still never built anything worth keeping. But you built a home with nothing but your hands and your love. If this helps you start again, then maybe that's the one thing I did right. Min-jae, she didn't cry, but she folded the letter carefully and placed it inside the same drawer where she kept Ji-woo's note, the one that said, I want to make you proud. Later that day, she met Junho outside the remains of the cafe. The tape was still up. The walls were blackened and broken. The roof bowed like a spine that couldn't bear any more. Junho had his arms crossed, his brow tense. They confirmed it, he said. Accelerant. And they found traces of a fingerprint on one of the broken bottles. Not much, but enough to open an investigation. Did they say who it belongs to? He hesitated. They're comparing it now, but the officer said it wasn't a random attack. Whoever did this had keys to the back door. She nodded slowly. Only a few people had those keys. Sua had once held a stake in the building's lease through Min-jae's old company. So what now? She asked. You can press charges if they match her prints. And then what? She said bitterly. We go to court? She drags me through months of legal battles. Paints me like a bitter ex-wife? I lose more time, more sleep, more peace. Junho was quiet. I don't want revenge, she said again. I want to start over. With what? He asked, softer now. You've got no kitchen, no ovens, no tables. I've got 2 hands, she said, lifting them, and 2 children who still believe in me. He watched her for a moment, then reached into his coat and pulled out a small set of keys. I've been saving for something of my own, he said, but it can wait. There's a food truck lot in Mapo. One of the vendors backed out. The owner knows me. He said if you want it, it's yours. Rent's cheap. Location's decent. All it needs is someone who knows how to cook with heart. She took the keys slowly. What about your dream? My dream was always to see you safe, he said simply. You saved me once, remember? This is just balance. Her throat tightened. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me yet, he said. Wait until the line forms around the truck. They both smiled, tired, bruised, but alive. That night, Ji-woo came into her room, holding something behind his back. I've been working on this, he said shyly. He handed her a piece of paper, a sketch. A food truck, drawn in colored pencil. Above the window, Dulce Hannock on wheels. She looked at him, stunned. "You think we should do it?" "I think we should move forward," he said. "That's what you always tell us." She hugged him tightly, her voice cracking. "You never stop surprising me." "Good," he said, "because I'm not done." The next day, she visited the truck. It was old, the paint chipped, the tires dusty. But when she stepped inside and ran her hand along the cold metal counter, she didn't see rust. She saw morning buns in baskets. She saw students laughing through the window. She saw herself, apron tied, sleeves rolled, smile returning. She turned to Junho. "It'll do." And so she began again. They worked late into the night, cleaning it out, scrubbing, painting, repairing broken hinges and reattaching shelves. Jiwoo watched YouTube videos on wiring lights. So-Yun painted a new sign, and Hygiene called old customers one by one, letting them know where to find her next. Word spread faster than she expected. By the end of the week, they were ready. The morning of the reopening, she stood outside the truck with her children, the city just waking up around them. She looked down at her hands, still scarred, still tired, but no longer empty. Jiwoo turned to her. "Do you think he'll come?" She didn't need to ask who. "I don't know," she said. "Would you want him to?" She thought for a long time, then finally answered, "I want him to know that we didn't fall." The mornings were colder, the prep space tighter, and the street noises never ceased. But there was movement again, the kind that gave meaning to tired feet and calloused hands. Hygiene found herself rising with the sun, flour dust clinging to her fingers before the world even stirred. Each morning, Jiwoo arrived early, tying his apron without needing to be asked. He had taken charge of organizing orders, keeping track of receipts, and fixing little things that broke inside the truck. So-Yun had created a tiny tip jar shaped like a rice ball with a smiley face, and customers adored it. They were scraping by, but they were standing, and somehow that was enough, until he showed up again. It was mid-afternoon, the lull between the morning rush and the evening crowd. Hygiene was cleaning the counter when she felt the shift in the air. A strange quiet fell over the street. She turned toward the sidewalk and saw him, Min-jae. His figure stood stiffly among the flow of people. Coat zipped to his neck, face pale, thinner than before. He wasn't holding anything. No flowers, no apologies, just his presence. She stepped out of the truck slowly, heart steady now, no longer trembling at the sight of him. He didn't move toward her. He seemed to be waiting for permission. She sighed and crossed her arms. "What do you want this time?" "I heard you reopened," he said. "I wanted to see it for myself." "Well, you've seen it. I also wanted to see them." She looked back at the truck. Jiwoo stood near the window watching. So-Yun was sitting on a stool inside, reading. "They're busy," Hygiene said firmly. "I won't stay long," Min-jae said. "But please, just a moment." She hesitated, then called toward the truck. "Jiwoo, come out for a second." Her son stepped down slowly, his face unreadable. Min-jae looked at him as if seeing a mirror of his past. "You've grown," he said, voice soft. Jiwoo didn't answer. Min-jae cleared his throat. "I saw your scholarship results. You got in." Jiwoo nodded. "I earned it." "I know," Min-jae said. "I wanted to say, I'm proud of you." "You don't get to be proud," Jiwoo replied. "You weren't there when I needed you to be." The silence hit harder than any shout. Min-jae lowered his gaze. "I know, and I'll carry that." Jiwoo's voice didn't waver. "You think a few words make up for all the years you chose silence? I watched my mother bleed her hands raw so we could eat. I saw her cry in motel rooms while pretending everything was okay. I had to become the man of the house before I even knew how to shave. I was scared," Min-jae said weakly. "You were selfish," Jiwoo shot back. "You walked out of our lives and expected we'd wait. But we didn't. We moved on." Min-jae's face crumpled, but he nodded. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," he said. "I'm just sorry." Hygiene stepped closer, placing a hand on her son's shoulder. "You came to see the truth," she said. Here it is. We survived you. We survived everything. I see that now, Min-jae murmured. And I'm glad. So-yeon peeked from the truck window then, and her eyes met his. She didn't speak. She didn't wave. She simply watched. Min-jae offered a broken smile and a nod, nothing more. And then, without another word, he turned and walked away. Hyejin exhaled deeply, the moment heavy with both grief and relief. Ji-woo looked up at her. Did we do the right thing? She ran her hand through his hair. We told the truth. That's enough. Back inside the truck, So-yeon tugged gently on her mother's sleeve. Is he gone? Yes, baby, Hyejin whispered. He's gone. Will he come back? Hyejin paused, then knelt to her daughter's level. The air buzzed with warmth and life. A small line had formed outside the food truck, customers laughing and chatting as the smell of grilled meat and sesame oil drifted into the night. Ji-woo was handling the orders like a professional, focused and precise. So-yeon sat on a small stool nearby, holding a tray of drinks she had helped pour. Hyejin stood behind the stove, flipping hotteok on the griddle, her face glowing from the heat and the quiet pride of watching her children thrive. Then the lights flickered. It was only for a second, a blink, but something in her chest tightened. Ji-woo, she called. Check the generator. He nodded and disappeared behind the truck. She turned back to the stove. Then came the sound. A small, distinct pop. Not mechanical. Glass shattering. Then a smell. Burning plastic. Ji-woo, she shouted, louder now. What is it? But before he could respond, black smoke curled from the back of the truck, winding into the night like a snake. People gasped. Someone yelled, Fire! Hyejin dropped the spatula. So-yeon screamed, Get away from the truck! Someone shouted. Hyejin raced to the back, panic roaring in her chest. Ji-woo was coughing, waving smoke away as he yanked at the power cable from the generator. It's burning inside, he choked out. Something under the sink. Hyejin didn't hesitate. She grabbed the fire extinguisher mounted inside, pulled the pin, and sprayed foam beneath the sink where a growing flame licked at the lower panels. Her hands shook, her vision blurred. The heat rushed against her face. Then a second explosion, louder this time, like a propane hiss. A deep boom that made the ground tremble. They stumbled back as the back corner of the truck blew open, the window shattering. Sparks rained out. So-yeon sobbed from the sidewalk, arms wrapped around her uncle Junho who had just arrived. Hyejin coughed violently, clutching her chest, her lungs thick with smoke. Ji-woo grabbed her arm. We have to move. They stumbled into the street, collapsing on the curb, surrounded by flashing lights and the rising wail of approaching sirens. A neighbor pulled a blanket around her shoulders. Someone handed Ji-woo a bottle of water. Hyejin looked up. The truck, her second chance, their rebuilt dream, was now engulfed in flame. Gone. Again. Junho rushed over, holding So-yeon tightly. Are you okay? Are you hurt? I don't know, Hyejin gasped. I don't know what happened. It was fine. Everything was fine. Ji-woo turned to her, eyes wide with realization. That wasn't an accident. She blinked at him. There was a smell before the fire, he said. It wasn't oil. It was chemical, like the cafe. Her blood turned to ice. Junho's jaw clenched. No, not again. A firefighter ran up, kneeling beside them. Everyone accounted for? Hyejin nodded. Any idea what could have started it? She hesitated. No. But there was something strange. It happened fast. We'll investigate, he said, already radioing the others. Minutes passed. Smoke rose into the sky, joining the stars above in dark silence. Hyejin sat still, staring at the truck. Her fingers trembled as she pressed them against her knees. I can't believe this, she whispered. Not again. Not again. Ji-woo placed his hand over hers. We're okay. That's what matters. But the business? We're still here, he said. That's the business. Us. She looked into his eyes, the certainty in his voice anchoring her to the earth. So-yeon climbed into her lap, face tear-streaked. Are we going to sleep on the floor again, Iyama? She bit her lip hard, fighting the wave of despair in her throat. No, she said, holding her daughter close. We'll figure something out. I promise. Just then, a plainclothes officer approached. Ms. Lee. She stood slowly. Yes. We pulled the security camera from the corner shop across the street. We have footage of someone approaching your truck 20 minutes before the fire started. Her breath caught. Who was it? Junho asked. The officer hesitated. We're working to identify the face, but we believe the same individual was seen near the site of the cafe fire as well. Hyejine's knees nearly gave. Was it a woman? Jiwoo asked quietly. The officer nodded. Hyejin closed her eyes. Sua. She didn't need proof. Not anymore. Junho's voice burned with fury. She's trying to erase you. She won't, Hyejin whispered. He looked at her. She can burn the truck, the building, the signs, but she can't burn what I've built inside my children, what I've built inside myself. Junho placed a hand on her shoulder. So what now? Hyejin looked at the rising smoke. Now, she said, voice calm and clear. We build again. Minjae lay in the narrow bed, thinner than ever, skin pale, lips dry. The oxygen mask hung from the side of his face, unused for the moment. His breathing was shallow but steady. He looked out the window at a tree blooming in the courtyard, eyes lost in its pink petals. A knock. He turned his head slowly. The door opened. Hyejin stepped inside. She carried no flowers, no bag, no hesitation. He sat up a little straighter, pain rippling through his chest. I didn't think you'd come. I didn't think I would either, she replied calmly, closing the door behind her. He motioned weakly to the chair beside the bed. Please, she sat. Her posture was strong, but her face was unreadable. For a moment, neither spoke. He broke the silence first. They told me it's my lungs. Too much stress, years of smoking. Something about scarring. Nothing left to fix. She nodded slowly. I heard. His voice cracked. They said a few months. Maybe less. I'm sorry. The silence between them held the weight of everything they'd never said. He turned toward her, eyes glassy. After the truck, I knew she wouldn't stop. I tried to stop her. I gave the police what I had, voice messages, emails, contracts. Enough to implicate her. They arrested her yesterday. Hyejin looked up, surprised. I didn't know. He nodded. They didn't want to make it public. But it's done. She exhaled. That won't bring the truck back. Or the cafe. No, he said.